record all your sales calls seamlessly, automatically. You set the rules and Grain just does it for you. In addition to recording, we will transcribe it and take AI notes to kind of extract the key information from the calls that you want to make sure you capture. And those notes get automatically synced into your CRM. I'll show you some of that in a little bit in a way that makes it really easy on a meeting by meeting basis to see it, but also to see over the entire deal. So you can really understand the motivations of your buyers, why they are engaging with you in the first place. And then one of the things that Grain is also really great at that people love is we're really great at extracting clips and moments from calls and aggregating those into stories so that you can share the voice of the customer, not just as summary from an AI, but in their own words and how they're exactly expressing themselves.
I know you're going to share this a little bit, but I do want to call that out that this clip piece here is really, really important for collaboration between the teams too. So as you kind of show us a little bit more about this, Jeff, I want to talk through some of the things that have been really helpful for us as well.
Yeah, of course. So do you want us to go directly in that demo? Shall we do that, Sam?
Yeah, let's do it. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and then you can go ahead and take a look at Grain. Because I think this is important for everybody to really understand what we're talking about here. And I think if you don't see it, you don't really get the power of this conversation intelligence piece and what tools like Grain can really do for your sales team and helping your service team as well. So Jeff is going to share his screen and kind of take us through a little bit of this. And then we'll come back here in a second too to talk again, like just how you put this into practice.
Great. Yeah, I'll just share briefly, just to give you a quick idea of what we're talking about, as Sam mentioned. So with Grain, you have all your calls, and this was what an AI output looks like. It takes the summary of the call, the outcomes, the action items, which are really useful as they get synced in HubSpot. So you can kind of get the quick upshots of the meeting. I'll also mention that you can do custom summaries. As you can see here, this is a sales discovery template where you are able to kind of define for the AI what specific information they want to pull out of the call. Doesn't need it. The standard summary works for everyone, but if you want, you can add a little information. As I mentioned, you can also create clips. The way clips are created is they're taken a moment of the call from the transcript, and you can name that clip. What that does is it just takes the 30 seconds or the 15-second snippet from that call, and it becomes an asset that you can share directly with your team. You can put it in Slack, you can put it in HubSpot, you can put it in documentation, or in Grain, you can put it in something called a story, which basically is a compilation of clips like a reel or something like that. If you want to put, a bunch of clips of how people respond to an objection, or a bunch of clips of why people say they like a specific feature, or why they're buying, or their needs, or whatever it may be. Another feature here is we call them playlists, but basically it's the ability to add calls into a specific collection of calls so that you can have an easy to find resource of multiple of the same types of call. As you can see here, those are a bunch of calls all about the same thing in one place that you can then share and give your team access to. Just show a couple more things here. This is what a deal summary looks like. I mentioned how Grain will summarize key information across multiple calls. We do it using this framework called SPICED, which is situation, pain, impact, critical event, and decision. These are the key things that you need to know for a successful handoff from sales to customer success. Situation is just a little bit about the company. Pain is what pain were they experienced? What is the reason that they're even talking to sales or looking for a solution in the first place? Impact is what's the impact that they hope that your solution will drive. That's usually like a metric or something like an emotional impact. Critical event is usually the trigger or the event that's causing them to have that conversation now. A lot of times pain goes unsolved or impact goes uncaptured, but there's something that triggers it. It could be the hiring of a new person. It could be a board meeting. It could be an event that's coming up, whatever that may be. And then the decision is, what is the decision criteria and how how that buying decision was made. The decision criteria is often really important from the sales to service handoff because that is how they're going to evaluate. It basically gives you the metrics on how they're going to evaluate the success of your software. So this is kind of what the summary of all those sales calls look like. So if there are 5 sales calls, we summarize it into one simple and easy view that you can just look at all this information in one place. And then also in each of these places, we link to the specific moments of the calls where the information is coming from. If you want to go, verify that the AI is accurately summarizing things, or to hear
Yeah.
it said in your customer's own words.
Jeff,
And then
could we
lastly,
pause? for
Yeah, I'll
just a
pause.
second on
Yep.
that piece, because I just want to make a big call out here, just to like really bring it home to what is actually happening within Grain. It is
Yep.
literally transcribing the calls, but then the AI is basically translating what it's hearing in those meetings, and then based off of the note template that either you use, so you have the spice and you have some other templates that you have in there, right? But
Yep.
you can also create your own questions. So if there's criteria for scoping, if there's criteria for sales that you need to listen to or that service needs to know, you can also create your own questions and have the AI find that information and provide the summary for it too. Isn't that correct?
Correct. Automatically on every call. So if you have a unique
Yeah.
qualification criteria, like a specific point of sale system or whatever it may be, you can specifically ask the AI, like, what point of sale system is this customer using? And if that is mentioned in the call, the AI will extract that from you and add it to your A&I, your notes in HubSpot for the call.
Yeah, so like for HubSpot, right? A lot of sales teams have playbooks in HubSpot. And for those who may not be familiar with the Sales Hub tool playbooks is essentially like a scripted Q&A. You have your questions and then the sales rep has to put in the answers. What we actually found is that we can use Grain to put in our playbook questions and then have the AI actually feed us the answers to those questions. So instead of the sales rep having to listen and remember for every single question that we need for scoping, the Grain's doing it for us. So I wanted to make that call out because I think like that is where the conversation intelligence is super powerful, especially because humans make errors and it's really hard to listen for a whole hour of a call and pick up on every detail. Here's
Yeah,
where the
exactly.
AI can do that. Okay, cool.
Exactly. And it allows you to just be fully focused on the conversation. So you can ask great follow-up questions if something's unclear or if you want to, pull a thread instead of trying to like frantically take notes while you're having a conversation, which is really hard for humans to do.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're welcome to reopen that. I think you're getting to some good stuff, but I wanted to pause for a second and just call out the implications of what we were seeing for sales teams, but also for that sales to service handoff.
Exactly. Thank you for flagging that. So this is the part. One of the things that's great about Grain is we're very focused on HubSpot. So you can see right here, every deal is linked directly in HubSpot. You can single click button and open it there. And this is one of the things that I think makes Grain unique is because we do service HubSpot teams. We built a really robust HubSpot integration. That spice summary for your deal that I just mentioned, you can get it set up so it shows directly on the object inside of HubSpot, which people love
Yeah.
and find very useful. And then I also mentioned that in the calls for every interaction, for every interaction you had with the customer, you can see that Grain will add those specific call notes as a activity on the deal.
Yeah.
So that is the quick demo of Grain. Lots more we could show there, but it gives you a sense of kind of the different ways you can use it to with that customer's sales to serve customer success handoff.
Awesome. And just as a reminder to everyone, for some reason chat is not working, but there is a Q&A section. If you click that little box at the bottom that has a question mark, you can put questions in there for us and we can answer those. Just wanted to make sure everyone's aware of that. But I think that HubSpot callout is the big one there. And that's what we really were found to be the biggest boon to our sales to service handoff. Let me go ahead and share the webinar deck again here and get this fired back up. There you go. But really, I think like the big takeaways that you have here, I'll let you talk through these, Jeff, but with Grain allowing us to transcribe the calls using the AI to capture the answers that we're hearing into an organized matter, it gives us the ability to create those robust handoff notes without having to spend hours of admin time going through and looking for that information in order to pass it off after the deal has been closed. Because the last thing you want is your sales team doing a bunch of admin work after the deal is done. And they hate that. That's the
Exactly.
literally their worst piece. Yeah. We do actually have a question really quick just before you get into your results here. Does Grain have to join the meeting or can it operate and transcribe in the background? Great question.
So yeah, Grain is it's a meeting bot. That's the way we can make sure we always get the information. However, you're also welcome to upload calls into Grain. That's perfectly fine. It just doesn't happen as 100% hands off or completely automatic. The other thing that I would say is there's also a lot of settings in Grain where you can do to trend you can set your own message for the bot. So it's sort of, you can put your own image there. You can put your own message. You can also make it so it doesn't have any video image. So that kind of just doesn't show if you hide video participants. So there's a lot of things we've done to make it sort of less intrusive. Uh, and I'd also say people are more kind of aware and used to that than they have been in the past. So it's, it becomes less of a thing, but that is
Yep.
something that we're hoping to deliver in this year, hopefully.
Awesome. Um, so let's talk a little bit about like what kind of results you're seeing from teams with Grain. I think we talked a little bit through this, but just to kind of summarize like the benefits of using Grain, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the benefits of using Grain with HubSpot. I'll let you take this step.
Yeah, I think we touched on a lot of the points on this slide. One that I will flag is this coaching and collaboration is I think we've
Yes.
mostly focused on the actual content or the actual work of how do you get a handoff from sales to service. But I also think it's important to coach your team members to be better at that. And the great thing about Grain is Grain will automatically flag coaching moments if a person did not actually ask good discovery questions to actually identify the pain. Grain will flag a call and say, "Hey, it looks like the rep didn't identify the pain on this call," and other types of sales skills. This can be really
Yeah.
helpful to improve the collaboration between sales and success because even if you're capturing all the information, if the right questions are not being asked, you're still going to miss that information. And I think, it's not the worst thing in the world, but you generally want to avoid as a service person. I hate it when I buy software and the person is asking me all the questions that I've already spent, 4 calls, going through a sales and so, or I thought the sales maybe was supposed to have figured out, and so it helps avoid the repeat of information or doing discovery again when you've already done discovery, and so it creates a magical experience for your customers when you're like, hey, you bought because you're trying to solve X problem by Y date for your critical kickoff. It just makes it seem like you're on top of things and creates a great first impression. So coaching is important. Um, the other thing that I flagged the higher meeting engagement of it allows your salespeople and your service people to be fully engaged in the conversation because you just know the AI is going to get it, particularly if you set it up to capture all the information you want. And even if you don't, the recording and the calls there, it's all searchable. You can do easy search queries to find anything you want. And then your point, you talked about you want to avoid all this admin work. It kind of just does the admin work so that your people can focus on what they're best at, which is having great customer interactions and solving customer problems.
And I want to like double tap on a few of these threads that you touched on here. So the coaching and collaboration, I loved that. So there's basically like on every call, there's a scorecard, and you can see basically 1 out of 5. Like, how well did they do with rapport building? How well did they do with objection handling? I can't remember all of the criteria, Jeff, if you remember, but
Needs identification is one that I flagged. Yeah.
yeah. And what I found really helpful about that is that it's actually visible for both the manager, but also the salesperson. So they can actually do their own retros on those calls to see where they can improve their skills. I have found that to be really, really helpful with training new salespeople or onboarding. So I really think that that's an understated feature inside of Grain for the sales team specifically. But the other thing I also wanted to mention too, and I think you kind of hit on this with the higher meeting engagement, is we actually use Gray not just for sales, but also for our actual meetings that we have with our customers. So what I've seen our customers do with Grain and HubSpot is yes, sales starts with it and they have those conversations. We get the conversation intelligence. We pass it off to our onboarding, our service team, implementation team. But then customer success, the onboarding team, basically anybody who interacts with our customers are having the conversations with Grain included. And what that's allowed us to do is, again, yes, have far higher engagement because nobody's worried about taking meeting notes. But we're also continuing the thread of the conversation from sales into the customer relationship. So if we do get to renewal, if we get to a point where there's an upsell, that can be flagged inside of Grain, flagged in HubSpot, and we can have a reference point to go back to. Because so often these conversations are happening in little silos, and when there's no documentation, no capturing of those conversations, the team member that's responsible for renewal retention is basically operating off of whatever they can see inside of the CRM. And with Grain, we have all those conversations not only in the CRM, but also transcribed and summarized for us, which is huge. It's really big. So no
I love
visibility
that.
issues there.
Yeah, I love that. And that's actually our team's strategy and commitment is to be able to build a tool that can be used by sales folks, people in sale in service and CS and product. Some other conversational intelligence tools out there, they're very much focused on sales. And you can just tell in the way they're designed and the way they're built and the way they're priced. But our team's strategy and commitment is trying to be for that full customer relationship across your whole company.
And I think that's a perfect segue too, to just talking a little bit about this customer journey that we've used within HubSpot and Grain. So we've talked at length about the sales discovery process. We know that you can get templates put in place to summarize certain questions, qualifying criteria that sales should be asking. And that way we are documenting that information within Grain. It's being carried over into HubSpot and it's attached to the deal within HubSpot. So there's only one place technically you have to look, which is HubSpot. And looking at that deal has all the information, all the conversations that you've had within Grain directly within it. Now, our team takes it a step further as well, and we take the information that we're getting from Grain and we've put together a handoff playbook that actually gets attached to the HubSpot deal. But we actually use custom objects. Many of our teams do. So, custom objects essentially are basically records that exist outside of companies, contacts, deals, tickets. For us, we create a project object. And that project object gets kicked off after signature. So essentially in HubSpot, we already have it automated where a signature comes in. Once that signature is registered on the deal, which happens seamlessly, automation will kick off the creation of that project. And because of that being associated to the deal, we'll pull all the information from Grain into the project. So now my service team, my implementers, don't have to go back to the deal, don't have to go back to Grain. All the information has been carried through for that continuity purposes. So they literally pick up here where we have a very short internal handoff. We've got all of our notes documented from Grain. It's in a format they can digest, and it's easy now. Before we had Grain, this process took at least an hour internally to like hand off the information, but it was taking our sales team an hour to 2 hours, which is crazy, per deal to document all the information that we were gathering in the sales discovery process.
And you're a
And so,
disciplined team, right? So you're actually doing it. A lot of teams, it's hard
yeah,
to get your salespeople to even do that at all.
yeah, yeah. And then you get into the situation where you just have no data because they sales does not want to do this process, and
Yeah.
so we found ways to automate it, and having Grain really cut down on that. But also then as we get going, I mentioned that we are capturing our client conversations with Grain too. The reason that that's been helpful is, first of all, when something comes up in implementation, if sales was 4 months ago, let's say, and now we're having a conversation about something, we can go back into the sales discovery calls and reference those first initial conversations to really understand the context and the start of this new piece that we're working on. But also, again, this is how we flag if we're getting, and you guys do this actually, I think, praise. So we can tag conversations that we're having that there's praise within it. But we can also capture things like upsell opportunities or requests that are coming. And then what we do internally is we turn those into tickets and start to categorize and quantify what kind of things are coming up with our clients. So you can see through this customer journey, and this is really just kind of like the sales to onboarding phase, how often those Grain transcripts come into play and how they can help us to not only get that first initial relationship piece up and running, but then also help with retention. So for us, Grain has been a huge boon to our entire process. So I hope that helps like show people how this works together and why.
Love that.
Uh,
It's awesome.
We do have a question too, Jeff. I think this one might actually be for me. So, you use a separate custom object for each project, or a single with records for each project? So we created a custom object called projects. So basically, it sits on our menu like companies, contacts, deals, tickets, and then projects is its own record entity. And then for each project that kicks off, so each deal is attached to a project, it'll create a custom object record, so its own individual record for that project. And so that project record is attached to our company clients and then also those deals that closed that project. And that's really helpful. Just for context, too, a lot of companies that are maybe in like the SaaS space, they'll create things like subscriptions. I don't know, Jeff, if you guys do that. But you can capture, just like, for us, we work in more projects because we're implementing, we're doing
Right.
things. But for SaaS, a lot of times that subscription object kind of stands in place of that project. So that's where you can have what tier are they on, how many licenses, if you have any other information that you want to be capturing from the tool itself into it. I digress a little, but having this custom object can be a really complete way of having all the data that you need to power the relationship with the customer, but then also those renewal, retention, upsell, cross sell conversations too.
And then Sam, are you using like a pipeline for a project specifically after kind of post sale for an implementation?
We do. So it's similar to how some teams will actually do implementation pipelines or onboarding pipelines to capture the major milestones that a company is flowing through. We do the same thing. So when we are in that kickoff phase, we'll have the project in that phase, and then we have various phases. We have a discovery phase, a build out phase, an adoption phase, etc. And so the project will actually flow through those stages. And the grain conversations that occurred at the deal level and on the customer level follow that project. So we have all the records in one place. We don't have to keep going back. So we don't bounce between the deal and the company record and contact records, for example. It's all in that one object, all within that one record.
That's great.
Huh. Well, awesome. I think we're doing okay on time here. So we will have a moment for questions here in a second, but just to kind of summarize some of these things, like if you are interested in learning more about the HubSpot piece specifically, I do have a great ebook here for driving customer success with HubSpot sales and service. So really looking at how you can drive revenue and retention with HubSpot sales and HubSpot Service Hub. That will also talk a little bit more. We didn't talk about this today because we're really looking at sales to service handoff, but talk a little bit more about the ticketing process and customer success and health scores within HubSpot. And of course, all that grain data can be absorbed into HubSpot and support with health scores as well. Probably a topic for a whole nother day, but
There we
wanted to
go.
make sure everybody had that available. So I just want to summarize here what are some of the actionable steps if you're using Grain and you're interested in having Grain and HubSpot together. I think the first thing to think about here is that Grain really helps to create a centralized database of all customer conversations within HubSpot. So everything that Jeff that you showed us, we can use methodologies like Spice, or it can be customized to pull in the information using AI, using that conversation intelligence so that people don't have to figure out what the answers are to those questions. And from there, that allows us within HubSpot to automate that handoff, go from sales to onboarding, and really have that continuity thread within Grain and HubSpot, having all of the conversations in one place. And we touched on this during your demo, team collaboration. So we have that in HubSpot, but we also have it within Grain. So you've got the playlists, you have snippets and clips, is what you called it, clips. Which, by the way, those clips can also be shared outward to customers if you need it to, which has been really helpful in the past. And finally, once you put all of this in place, so you saw our customer journey, one of the things that we've been working on is really monitoring and optimizing that handoff process. So we actually use HubSpot surveys to ask our internal team, how did the the kickoff go internally, what kind of information was missing. But then we also use surveys externally at milestones within our programs too to capture what may have been missed so that we can optimize our grain templates and optimize our whole process just in terms of how sales and service interact. So basically, Jeff, do you want to summarize it? Like when you have Grain and HubSpot together, what do you get?
Happy customers.
Yay! I love that.
But you did a great job summary. I don't have much to add beyond that.
Awesome. So we're here to answer any other questions. If y'all have any, go ahead and pull up the Q&A section here, and you can also email Jeff and I after this. We will be sending out the recording, and we'll also send out any information that we had in here. So that sales to service handoff guide, will also provide that. Jeff, just because we have a few people still hanging out, I wanted to ask you one quick question about just what's on the roadmap for Grain when it comes to conversation intelligence. I know you showed us a lot today, but is there anything that you could tell us about what you guys are working on or anticipating that could really support this process?
Yeah. So I think in the short run, some of the things that we talked about, we're going to be improving the notepad so that you can kind of, Grain has a notepad that you can take notes during the call, but we're going to be doing a lot to make that better so your notes can be augmented by AI. I'm really excited about that detail. Just so
Nice.
that it's not all AI, but a little bit of your input. If there's important things you want to make sure you jot down during your calls. We're going to also be improving follow-up emails with customers. We have a feature for that, but it's, we're making it much better so that basically just after your call, one click button, it'll draft a follow-up email for your customers so that you
Love
can
that.
make that process way more streamlined. I'm really excited about that. We're improving our feature. We have this feature where you can kind of ask AI about your meetings, but we're making that way better so that if you want to jump in on a call on Grain on a meeting your colleague had, and you want to just say, hey, what was the sort of the main concerns of the customer in this meeting? You just type the question, and then the AI will answer. You can have a chat with the AI about the meeting if you want to just get up to speed really fast without watching it. And
Nice.
then also you can find the moments if you do want to watch the moments from that interaction. So those are some of the ones
I
that
love
short
that.
run. Yeah, yeah.
Love that. And one other question too. So, like, we talked a lot about the sales process today, but I do know that you've built Grain for service for success as well. What are some of the ways that customer success teams are utilizing Grain that might be slightly different than what we maybe talked about with sales?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question. I think thematically it's very similar. It's making sure that you capture the key takeaways from your meeting, the next steps, because a lot of times service and customer success it's a bit more of a project than sales. Sometimes sales is a project, but oftentimes it's like the customer needs you to do specific things. I need you to give these people this license. I need you to make sure you configure this thing, and
Mm-hmm.
you need to make sure you like great onboarding teams, they never lose, or service teams, they never lose those next steps and action items, and making sure that the customer also knows that you're on top of that. So that's, I'd say, one of the main things people use Brain for. The other is also to, you mentioned how you can share those snippets, is to flag key moments
Yeah.
and kind of send it to, if there's a product team or if there's any kind of support team that like, hey, if we could, add this tooling or if we could add this feature, kind of capturing the voice of the customer and kind of sending it on is something we also see a lot from customer success and service teams.
That's a great call out. Like basically using these conversations not only to power sales to service and customer success retention, but to also provide feedback internally to product and other teams that might be benefiting from the conversations that are happening, but they never see it because they're not on the Zoom with you or Teams
Yeah,
or whatever.
exactly. And it's, I've just seen in my experience working with so many customers that you can complain about something like, oh, we need to change this product thing or we need this tooling, but if you actually, share a customer in its own words, or even five, if you create a story, like I mentioned, you can create a bunch of clips, tends to really, really move the needle more.
I love that. That's so great. Well, all right. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for sharing some extra information with us today. Thanks for being on, and thank you to everyone else too who joined in today. We really appreciate it, and we hope to have conversations with you all soon.
Same. It was awesome. Enjoyed it, and great topic. We'll hope to do it again. Maybe we can, talk about health scores or something in the future.
There you go. I think there's lots to talk about for sure. All right.
Cool. All
All
right.
right. Thank
Later.
you, everyone. Bye.